Good morning, friends. Welcome to Ecoholics YouTube channel. My name is Avinash Agarwal, and in this video, I'll be discussing with you important current affairs for 5th June 2024. We'll be discussing two articles that are relevant from our exam point of view, which have been picked up by me from the Mint newspaper. First is going to talk about India's tax policy, direct and indirect taxes, what should be the road ahead. Second is going to talk about the possible rural and farm distress that may have caused BJP to lose its majority on a standalone basis. So these are the two articles that we'll be discussing. So please note that after the elections, during the budget, some of the best articles, some of the most analytically rich articles get published. So going ahead, we are likely to see fantastic coverage on a variety of different topics. So do stay tuned for these lectures on a daily basis. The note that I am using can be downloaded from Ecoholics app. You need to do a quick and free registration, and you can then go to the study material section and the current affairs section, and you will be able to download the note. Just keep that in mind. Let us start with our discussion. So first article is going to be talking a lot about taxes, both direct and indirect taxes. It is going to give us a brief sense of what happened in the past and what should happen going ahead. Okay. So one of the major important developments in the policy landscape of India was the introduction of goods and services tax that happened in the last 5 years, and it has resulted not exactly in the last 5 years, a little before that, but this goods and services tax has now established itself. It has become very robust. Collections are increasing year on year. On a monthly basis, we have been hitting new highs recently. So GST collection in that sense is going in the right direction. When you see the number of e-way bills and the number of GST registrations done, so those numbers are also encouraging. They are also in the positive direction. So this gives us a sense that there is a greater push towards formalization of the Indian economy that is happening. That was the precise reason why, one of the precise reasons why GST was introduced, to boost formalization in India, which was otherwise an informally dominated economy. So these are steps in the right direction. One important question that can be asked in the examination, that is getting asked over here, is that do you think that we should do a rejig of GST rates? Yes or no? So the answer over here is that we need to consider elasticities of demands for elasticity of demand for products. So if products have good elasticity of demand, in the sense that if prices do increase, there is not going to be, let us say, a substantial negative impact upon the demand, then you can go ahead and rejig GST rates and rationalize GST rates. And when I say rationalize GST rates, I don't mean decreasing the GST rates further. I mean probably increasing the GST rates in certain cases where they are way below the optimal mark. Okay, so we need to study elasticities of demand for products to understand what is the likely impact on increase in prices on demand, and therefore take a call that can we kind of rationalize GST rates slightly upward, so that we start hitting the revenue neutral rate, so that we start hitting the sweet spot where revenue collections are optimal. So that is something that we need to look into. If you find some articles elsewhere also which talk about this aspect, that how we can rejig the GST rates to increase GST collection going ahead without hurting the demand, without hurting the consumer. So do read those articles. Those articles are going to be very important going ahead. I will come across such articles, I will share with you. Going ahead, speaking about direct tax collection has also been impressive. In 22-23, direct tax collection increased by around 17.7%. There is a rise in the number of income tax payers. There is a rise in the number of returns filed. If you look at the absolute numbers over a period of last 7 years, so you will see that between FY 16-17 and FY 22-23, 74 million individuals and entities have been filing return, right? So the idea is that there is a 65% jump in 23 as compared to 17. This is something that you need to note down. That is why I have highlighted this in yellow. We want these macro numbers, we want these impressive numbers to be a part of your answers. It's okay to not put really current numbers which can change on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. It's okay to ignore them, but these are long period trends and we want you to be able to include these in your answers. So whenever you're speaking about direct tax or indirect tax or fiscal policy, These are the kind of numbers that should be a part of evidence in your answer, that if you're saying that government has been taking the right steps so far as direct taxes is concerned, so how did you convince yourself to come to this conclusion? So this particular data point is an evidence that can help you in coming to the right conclusion. Okay, moving ahead, structure of income tax rate is stabilizing. A lot of new taxpayers, they are adopting the new tax regime rather than the old tax regime. You should know that the new tax regime, it is a simpler, cleaner regime with lesser loopholes, with limited exemptions. So the revenue collection for the government is also quite decent from the new tax regime. So a lot of new taxpayers are opting for the new tax regime. We have reduced the corporate income tax rates in 2019, but unfortunately that did not result in an increase in private investment that we were hoping for. So this is the kind of evidence that I want you to note down for yourselves. So if you look at the ratio of corporate investments to their net income, that means that put corporate investments in the numerator, put net income in the denominator. So that ratio has been declining since FY21. So the whole purpose of reducing the corporate income tax rates was to present India as an attractive investment destination, but unfortunately we have not been able to do the other things that were required to package India as an important and attractive investment destination. Of course, there is incoming investment, new investment that is happening in the country, no doubt about that. But when you compare yourself with that, let us say that of a Vietnam, right? Or when you compare yourself with anybody whom you would like to be, like such as a China, then you are basically falling short of, where you should be. So that is something that we need to look at. Okay. Now, what should be the future trajectory of the tax rates? I've described what has happened in the past. I've talked about indirect taxes. I've talked about direct taxes. What should be the future trajectory of tax rates? Now, this requires application of mind. And the second part of the article, you will see that there is an application of mind over here, right? So number one priority should be to ease confrontation between tax authorities and taxpayers. So while we have been able to achieve this in a variety of different spheres, so far as corporate taxes is concerned, there are still a lot of court cases pending. There are still a lot of legal disputes pending. So there is some positive scope of work in that direction. We need to do something over there, right? We have a higher tax to GDP ratio as compared to what we were having, let's say, earlier. Probably it's not the right thing to compare India's tax to GDP ratio with that of OECD countries or with that of other countries, because their economic realities, economic structure, economic composition is different from India's. Having said that, how should we look at our tax policy, or how should we look at our fiscal policy, right? So we have to keep in mind the inequalities, the lackluster demand, right? And then decide what our tax structure should be. There is a lot of debate that is happening around introduction of or rejigging of capital gains reform, right? There is a lot of capital gains tax. There is a lot of discussion around inheritance or wealth tax. There is a lot of discussion around increasing the tax rates in India. So we need to take an informed stand on all of these parameters. What is the basis of taking an informed stand? See, whether you are reducing taxes or increasing taxes, you have to look at what is going to be the impact on revenue A, and you have to look at the social impact B. These are the two things that you need to look at while talking about taxation, right? The revenue potential as well as the socio-economic impact. Now, when we talk about inheritance or wealth tax, you have to remember that when this inheritance or wealth tax was abolished from India, it was contributing very little revenue in real terms. Okay, it was called a paper tax because it wasn't contributing significant revenue at all. Okay, now if we increase this wealth tax, will it A, contribute significant revenue? Therefore, if the answer is yes, then we should talk about it, debate about it. And if we do actually introduce such kind of a tax, then what is going to be the socio-economic impact? Will HNIs move money out of India? Will HNIs move out of India? Will India become a better investment prospect, a better investment destination, or a less attractive investment destination? Will India become a more equal country, or that will have no impact? This kind of a tax will have no impact on inequality, right? So these are the kind of questions that we need to answer vis-a-vis wealth tax before we introduce wealth tax. So I am trying to inform you. I am trying to form your opinion that tomorrow, if you are facing these kinds of questions, then these are the kind of pointers that you have to think about. Or when you are preparing, then whenever you come across an article, let us say on wealth tax, then these are the kind of insights that you need to glean out so that you are better prepared for the examination. So that is about wealth tax. Coming to capital gains tax, right? So you invest in FDs, you invest in mutual funds, you invest in properties, you invest in gold, you invest in a variety of different, asset classes. So whatever appreciation or whatever gains you have from a variety of asset classes, so the taxation across asset classes should also be uniform. It shouldn't happen that, there is lower taxation on a certain asset class than other asset classes. Then what typically happens is that if there is a lower taxation on, let us say, a certain asset class, a lot of people will invest only in that asset class, or there will be a predominant favoritism towards that asset class. So these are all, distributional issues that need to be taken care of. So the important point is that if you are tinkering around with capital gains tax, do tinker around with it, do make it better, but always keep in mind that what will be the impact on the financial markets. So that is what needs to be highlighted, that wealth tax, do whatever needs to be done, but after an informed debate that, what is going to be the net positive impact out of it. Similarly, changes to capital gains tax, do it, but after understanding what is going to be the net positive impact out of it, right? These are some of the important things that you need to keep in mind. At a more macro level, if we compare ourselves today and we see where we were in 1990s, so in 1990s, our priority was to invite foreign capital inflows into India, which would bring best management practices, best manufacturing practices, best production practices into our country and help us go in the right direction, right? So that was the objective of 1990s policy reforms. So today's policy reforms, what should be the objective? So foreign capital is definitely coming in, FDI is coming in, there is no dearth of FII in India, we are sitting on strong foreign exchange reserves. So what should be the priority for today's policy reforms, right? Maybe our priority should be employment generating private investment. That kind of private investment that can significantly generate employment in our country, in desired sectors, in desired geographies. Maybe that should inform the policy making going ahead, right? And to decide what the future should be, we should probably have some kind of a committee which will look into direct taxes. Fiscal consolidation is obvious. We are not going to relent so easily upon it. Revenue augmentation is important for several states. We need to find innovative ways of financing projects, especially energy transition project and infrastructure development projects, which are typically having a long gestation period. Okay. And we have to always be mindful of the fact that macroeconomic realities can become, not so good looking because of war, inflation, oil politics, and growth uncertainties in rest of the world. So while we are making our country's macroeconomic policy, we have to be mindful of the external environment in which we are operating. So this article has given you a sense of where we have come from so far as indirect and direct taxes are concerned, and where we need to go so far as direct and indirect taxes are concerned. What are the major debates that are ongoing right now, and what are the kind of goalposts that we should set for ourselves going ahead. We need to develop further upon this idea, which I'm sure that going ahead we will be able to in this series of lectures. Moving ahead to the next article, and again, if there is any doubt, please feel free to ask. Let us talk about farmers, rural jobs, MSP, and incomes and debt levels at the rural area. Now you have to realize that had BJP gotten a standalone majority, a lot of these articles may be having a different color, a different shade. And today a lot of these articles are having a different color, a different shade because of the kind of unexpected results that the country received yesterday. Not unexpected by all. A lot of psephologists such as Yogendra Kumar, they had Yogendra Yadav. So many psephologists, many experts had seen this coming, but this was basically a kind of an awakening for a variety of different sections of the society. Having said that, let us understand probably the causes, the negative factors that may have brought about this kind of an outcome from a farmer's perspective, from a rural perspective, right? Now, there has been a consistent demand for guaranteed crop prices, a legal guarantee or a legal backing for minimum support prices. So what is minimum support price, by the way? So MSP is what the government pays to the farmers when it procures from the farmers. Okay, so that's like the bottom for prices for agricultural commodities, that you don't need to sell at prices lower than this price. If let's say market prices, MSP is at X, and market prices is, let us say, X minus 5%, Don't sell at X minus 5%. Come to the government and sell it at X, sell it at price equals to X. So this X becomes the floor price or the bottom price. Price cannot go or doesn't go below this particular X level. That is what MSP does, right? So what farmers, particularly from Punjab, Haryana, have been agitating for, so they have been asking for a law which guarantees these MSPs. Right now, there isn't any law which guarantees MSP. There is just an executive order passed by the government, right? That okay, this is going to be the MSP for the coming year. We are going to procure from you, etc., etc. But there is no law which binds the government to, let us say, actually procure at MSP. There is no law that binds the government to actually declare an MSP. There is no law that guides the government while deciding what the MSP should be. So farmers are saying that we want a legal backing for the MSP. Why are farmers demanding that? Because farmers are worried that the government may throw the MSP regime out of the window. They may dilute it. They may not be willing. They may not be interested in procuring various commodities at MSP as they have been in the past. And for farmers, agriculture remains an important source of income in many parts of the country. So therefore, they just want to secure their income by having this kind of a legal backing for MSP. Right or wrong? Make sense or doesn't make sense? That's not what I'm discussing right now. That's part of separate discussion. I'm just trying to discuss with you that what could be the probable reasons which helps understand what could be the probable economic reasons which helps understand this present political outcome, right? That is what the purpose of this particular article is, right? So demand for guaranteed crop prices, right? This is one of the reasons, right? Farming has become increasingly unprofitable. That could be another reason. There is this interview which has been taken from a farmer, right? And a lot of farmers believe this probably, that this PM Kisan 6,000 rupees transfer on a per annum basis that the farmers are getting, this is a good start in the right direction. But this is not sufficient to make up for unremunerative farming or to make up for substandard incomes that farmers are making, right? So that can be another reason why farmers or rural areas are unhappy. Another reason could be that government's priorities typically has been to keep food inflation in India under control, to make sure that the kind of prices that, let us say, the middle class pays in urban areas for food items, that is kept under control. So that is something which is always on government's priority, right? And to do that, government bans export of agricultural commodities. To do that, government bans stocking of agricultural commodities by private traders. So as a result of all these steps, typically what happens is that the value chain, the supply chain for farm products, that gets damaged. Farmers are not able to reach out to external markets where they can get good prices. Stockists are not interested in creating a robust supply chain, so farmers suffer because of that as well. So all of these steps that government takes to cool prices down in India end up hurting the farmer directly or indirectly, and that is what farmers can be unhappy about. Like for instance, wheat, rice, sugar, all these items ka export was banned in the last 1.5 to 2 years at various different points of time to cool the prices down. One of the most important talking point of the BJP government between 2014 and 19 was doubling of farmers' income by 2022. Now nobody talks about it, which is quite unfortunate. Why? Because the target has not been met and probably cannot be met easily. For instance, between 2015 and 2019, nominal income of farmers increased from, let us say, 8,000 to, let us say, 10,200. This isn't doubling, and we don't even have verified and dependable figures for 2022. So we don't know what is really happening over there. But for sure, had doubling of farmers' income happened, then we would have known, because government would have advertised it. The fact that we don't know means that probably it hasn't happened, right? So fact that we went ahead and said that we are going to do this and ended up not achieving anything close to it may be one of the reasons why there is so much, why there is some distress or why there is some anger, right? If you look at the average amount of debt among rural households, so that has increased from 32,500 to 59,700 in 2018. These are the kind of numbers that should be a part of your evidence that there is some distress in rural areas. If you look at the prices in rural areas, so they have increased at a quicker pace between 2019 and 2014 as compared to urban areas. These are real evidences that need to be a part of your answers, right? If you look at CMIE ka data, that is Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, they say that real income and wages for people who are employed in agriculture and construction, they have been flatlining over the last 5 years. That real wages have not increased. So at a nominal level, my wages may have increased, but prices have increased also at the same rate. Therefore, my real purchasing power or my real wages has been flatlining. It has not increased in the last 5 years. That is what CMIE data suggests, right? Government passed 3 farm laws without much discussion, without much deliberation. Forget with the opposition, but with the larger farm bodies, there was hardly any discussion on those 3 farm laws that were created. While those laws may be intended in the right direction, while the content of that law may have been exactly what planning commission had been talking about for the last 10, 20, 30 years of its existence, right? But the way those laws were introduced, the way those laws were rammed through the parliament and thrust into the public domain, it wasn't appreciated. Those laws were misunderstood. There wasn't any consensus around those laws, and the government was forced to repeal those laws, right? So these are the kind of approaches that we really need to rethink. We need to probably have some better and greater amount of deliberation, discussion, consensus building, making sure that stakeholders are aligned with the direction that we are taking, and then traveling in that direction. Probably that's how reforms are done in India, right? So another data point that is very relevant is that we have not been able to create jobs for rural youth, and that gets reflected in migration statistics to urban areas. Migration to urban areas in India, it's not abating. It's not settling down at all, which probably again indicates to you that there isn't much enough to do in rural areas, right? In the first tenure between 2014 and 2019, because of demonetization, there was a complete collapse in crop prices, right? The second BJP term between 2019 and 2024 was much better. We did not have these kinds of collapse happening, thankfully. If you look at the overall growth rates, so between 2019 and 2024, agriculture sector enjoyed a growth rate of 4.2% on an average, which is 1 percentage point higher than 2014 and 2019, right? But nevertheless, farmers do often sell at low prices. Farmers do often discard their produce, throw it away on roads, because they simply can't afford the cost of storing and transporting those items, given that the final realization is going to be so low, right? So farmers end up throwing that produce rather than transporting it or storing it, right? Rural distress is also because of lack of adequate jobs. Jobs is what we need to create. So you see, first article also said that probably what we need to do is that we need to have a policy that engenders private investments that can create jobs in India. Second article is again talking about jobs. So probably these people who are talking about jobs know something that they're talking about, and maybe it would be relevant for the government to focus upon this aspect. So going ahead, we will be coming across a lot more articles, like I said, analytically rich articles, deep articles, sectoral deep dives, etc. Now that the new government is in place, now that the budget is going to come in July, full budget, so you can expect a lot of fantastic articles coming in on a variety of issues, which I'll cover with you. So I'll bring this session to an end over here. Thank you so much for joining in. See you tomorrow. Bye bye. Take care. Jai Hind to all of you guys.